To each of these three statements, I can actually speak for quite some considerable time. The first, if I could pick up on the comments of the Honourable Nick Goran, and appreciating that the government has been taking measures, let me just give you one short example of what I experienced before the government had implemented the new policies. A child was being sexually assaulted in school. The level of assault was increasing. The child was suffering. I put in, as mandated, a report to the DCP. The DCP contacted me again and asked, what is the name of the victim? So they could take action. The victim? What about the name of the child who's doing the attacking? This is a mental problem, a health problem. We need to deal with the issues involved. They said, we don't want to know the name of that child. What is the child who has been assaulted? What action are you going to take? Well, no action. So I said, hang about, we have a child who is being increasingly, so level by level, and level of assault increasing. And the Department of Child Protection, when I questioned them, they said that they would not take any action against the perpetrator. And I said, at what level would you then begin to take action against the perpetrator of this sexual crime and this regular assaults? And the answer was, when the victim has been raped, then we will take action. I took this matter up with the then director of the DCP, and I received the same bland response of doing nothing. And I have to say, this does reflect my interaction with DCP over the decades, in that the low-hanging fruit is dealt with, the real problems are swept under the carpet until crisis happens, and then we get coronials where the word is passed round and round. I find this intolerable, and I assume the government does as well. Action needs to be taken, but it depends on the people who are actually implementing it to actually do what is right. And often they are overloaded, overburdened, overworked. And I think this is probably what we've got to deal with, that we all would agree this is unacceptable and we all would like to take action, but it is often too difficult to organise in our daily work. I find this tragic. I could then go on and talk about the ambulance ramping, because you're talking to someone who's actually worked at that level in emergency department. I've borne also a few words about the tragic death of Aishwarya Ashwath and how that has been dealt with the classical way of seeking to blame the doctors and nurses involved. When what we should be looking at is the policy of the health department due to their two main primary concerns. One is to reduce the risk of being sued. Their insurance is kept valid. And the second concern is to manage budget. They don't actually care about the health of the patients. That's not their responsibility. That is abrogated to the staff at the front line. Part of their managing the budget involves that they wish to reduce their costs. They don't actually deal in generating revenue, they deal in managing costs. This is a feature of government. I've experienced this at both ends. And to do that, they reduce the full-time equivalents available. So they can then say, no, we are fully staffed. And that is a true statement. They are fully staffed, but is it appropriate for the needs? In today's West Australian, I read about how the nurses and doctors at the Perth Children's Hospital are suffering and continuing to suffer because they are overworked. The response from management is, yes, it's a busy time of year. And they are writing and emailing and complaining and saying there will be another child dying because no action has been taken. Now, if you refer this situation of cutting the full-time equivalents and then being fully staffed to the state of the emergency department where patients are coming through, there's two aspects there. First of all, why, in the name of all that is holy, are you going to the emergency department with a cold? I don't feel well. My GP didn't have any appointments. I'm prepared to wait 5 hours and complain about it. We're also dealing with people coming in with the effects of alcohol or methamphetamine, causing an unholy amount of time to be spent on them. And the reduction in FTEs under those conditions mean that you simply cannot clear an emergency department. Put yourselves in the shoes of, say, the iron ore being taken from the mine on a truck, a huge earth mover, and then you taking it to the point of crushing. And they can't absorb that because the crusher is moving too slowly. So the trucks are now backing up down the mine site because they can't unload it onto the crusher to get treated and sent off on the train. That, in essence, is what's happening with the ambulances just now. We complain about ambulance ramping. It's the wrong question. The question is, why is the emergency department not able to put the patients through who are attending? Because the ambulance officers, when they rock up to the ED, they should unload the patient into ED, say, thank you very much, this is the condition, off to the next call. Is that not the case? I ask anyone here, does anyone else have different experience to mine? I suspect not. So rather than blaming the ambulance service, St John's Ambulance, for being unable to offload their patients, we should be focusing on helping the health service to work more efficiently, so that no more children need to die because they haven't been attended to because the nurses and doctors are working their backsides off and their full-time equivalents have been cut. I've experienced this many times. It's practical experience. Now, there's no bad intent at parliamentary level am I directing this. It's simply because the people who work here don't actually have the experience, at least not often have the experience, of working under these conditions. If you don't know what's going on, how can you make sensible policy? Because it's a theory. The same thing with the people in the management of the health service. It's not that they're bad people, just they're not at the front line. They're trying to manage as best they can without the experience of standing at the front line, patients at the door, and you're unable to deal with them. All hell breaks loose. The third area where I want to address this motion, and bearing in mind, I am going to be pointing out that I ascribe no blame to any side of the House. This is simply the way we are, because we have no real relevance in the real world to what's actually going on. But the housing. I spoke yesterday about hempcrete, a very useful application of a very useful plant, which can make cheap and affordable housing, which is bushfire safe, which is, you can make a shelter out of it. You could create it in prefab form for allowing the indigenous people to, first of all, grow their own homes, and secondly, build their own homes in a way which is appropriate culturally, reducing the homelessness that we have in the indigenous population. We can do the same. Outside our very doors, there is a protest just now from the homeless in Perth, for whom we could provide homing were we of a mind to, bearing in mind the proven fact, the multiple times proven fact, that treating the results is more expensive than treating the cause. Were we to provide every homeless person with a home, especially a home made of hempcrete, which we can grow and make ourselves, the costs would be less than dealing with the effects of homelessness. Which leads on to the question, of course, is what about the mental health issues which arise due to homelessness? Should we not deal with that as a cause as well? Looking at homelessness is not about a matter of trying to provide more buildings, but reducing the need for people to become homeless in the first place. Now, I could talk for hours on each of these subjects, as you can probably guess from my passion just now. In support of the motion, I can say, yes, I support the motion, although I would be spreading the concern and the blame, if you like, to all sides of the House, to everybody in this House, because actually it is up to us to look at the facts in the face and deal with them appropriately.